This morning, the Princess of Wales back on the global stage. Kate's first international trip since her cancer recovery, stepping out on her own, a research trip of sorts, learning about a cause she cares deeply about.
Thousands of people have packed the square. People are hanging out the windows, and you can see her right here, meeting some of her littlest fans.
Sandringham had witnessed grief before, but nothing like this. The room was already heavy with silence when the Queen's final letter was brought forward. Sealed, preserved, and untouched until that very moment. Princess Catherine sat still, composed on the outside. But the instant the words were read aloud, something inside her gave way. What followed was not protocol, it was heartbreak. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Catherine entered that private gathering, determined to survive it with grace. She had promised herself she would stay calm for William and for a family still learning how to breathe under loss. Sandringham, the royal country estate, where the family gathers in grief, had suddenly become heavier than a home. It had become the place where the past returned with a voice no one could challenge. The final letter, a sealed personal message, left by the monarch to be opened during crisis, was carried like a warning. William felt the change before anyone named it. He saw Catherine's fingers tighten and understood that what came next would not belong to ceremony. It would belong to pain. The reader's voice did not shake, but the words did. The Queen spoke of duty, sacrifice, and courage when a family becomes more than blood, when it becomes a symbol the nation watches. Catherine tried to hold herself together, yet the first crack came when the message turned directly toward her. The monarch had written that the future would need a steady heart, someone who could protect the crown, meaning the monarchy's authority and survival, from pride, bitterness, and fear. Charles looked down, and the king's face changed as though he had heard an accusation inside a blessing. He knew his mother had seen tensions before the palace admitted them. He knew she had prepared for a storm. William reached for Catherine's hand, not as the prince, but as a husband, watching the woman beside him carry a legacy too heavy for one soul. Catherine broke then, not loudly, just enough for the room to understand that the letter had found the deepest part of her. Charles remained still, but the king's silence said what his voice could not. The Queen had not only remembered Catherine, she had chosen her as a guardian of something fragile, and as her head lowered, one question filled Sandringham like thunder. Why was this letter meant to be read now? But before anyone could understand the true power of the Queen's words, they had to face the people those words had just exposed. There were no cheering crowds, no balcony smiles, no polished statements to hide behind. Inside that room, the monarchy had been stripped down to its most human form. A father carrying guilt, a son protecting his wife, a queen consort fighting for position, and a princess suddenly placed at the center of a future she had never asked to dominate. Every breath felt dangerous. Every silence felt like judgment. Catherine stayed where she was, but nothing about her felt untouched anymore. The Queen's words had moved her from the edge of the gathering to the emotional center of it, not because she reached for power, but because the monarch had placed her moral strength where everyone could see it. Sandringham mattered, because it was not just another royal residence. It was the family estate, where private decisions often carried public consequences. The crown, meaning the monarchy's power, duty, and image, as seen by the nation, now seemed to rest less on ceremony and more on one woman's ability to hold broken people together. Catherine understood that, and the fear in her eyes made William shift closer. William did not speak at first. He watched Catherine with controlled tension, knowing that any recognition of her future role would also fall on him as the next king. The prince had spent years preparing for duty, but this was different. This was not a calendar of events or a line of succession, meaning the order deciding who inherits the throne. This was his wife, being named by grief itself, as someone the family might need more than anyone had admitted. He wanted to protect Catherine from that weight, yet he also knew why the Queen had trusted her. That truth hurt, because it made her suffering look like service. Charles felt the sharpest sting. The king heard his mother's message as guidance, but also as a mirror, and he did not like what it showed. If the Queen had prepared for a time when Catherine's steadiness would matter more than his authority, then his reign had already been judged in private. Charles lowered his gaze, then lifted it again, trying to look composed. But the room had already seen the wound. Camilla saw it too. The Queen Consort sat guarded and still, one hand tightening against the arm of her chair as she realized the emotional balance had shifted away from her. Anne studied everyone with cold precision. She had carried quiet concerns for months about loyalty, influence, and the future direction of the crown, and the letter now seemed to confirm what she had feared. A senior aide stepped forward with a second envelope linked to the first, then paused when Charles raised his hand. The aide froze, and the king ordered it held back until the family had absorbed what had already been read. Catherine's tears were no longer weakness. They were the first sign that the Queen had named her as something far greater than a grieving daughter-in-law. And as every face around the table revealed a different kind of fear, the fruits of this moment began reaching backward to one incident no one inside the palace could forget. The Queen's final letter did not appear out of nowhere. It was not a sentimental relic pulled from a drawer for comfort. It was a warning that had been waiting for the right wound to open. And the wound began months earlier, during one private ceremony at Sandringham, when Catherine made a quiet choice that changed how the late Queen saw the future. Catherine had not known she was being watched so closely that night. She had entered the Sandringham candle ceremony with the same calm restraint everyone expected from her, yet beneath that calm, the family was already strained. The ceremony, a private remembrance where senior royals gather to honor loss and renew family unity, mattered because it was supposed to heal old wounds before they reached the public. Instead, it exposed them. Princess Charlotte became visibly distressed as the tension around the room tightened, and Catherine stepped away from formal seating to comfort her daughter. Charlotte needed protection, not protocol, and Catherine chose the child in front of her over the rank expected of her. The Queen saw everything. She noticed Catherine kneel beside Charlotte, whispering gently, while others stayed frozen in silence, afraid to disturb the order of the moment. The monarch understood what no one said aloud. The future of the family would not be saved by perfect ceremony alone. It would need emotional steadiness. It would need someone who could see pain before it became scandal. That mattered, because the monarchy's public strength had always depended on private discipline, and if private discipline turned cold, the whole structure could crack. Catherine had not made a speech. She had not demanded attention. She had simply protected Charlotte, and that simple act changed the Queen's mind. Charles felt the humiliation like heat under his collar. The king knew his granddaughter's distress had revealed the fractures everyone had tried to hide, and he could not pretend the moment had passed unnoticed. William understood something different. The prince saw Catherine protecting Charlotte when the room's silence had become unbearable, and he knew his wife had done what duty could not. Charles saw exposure. William saw courage. Between those two reactions, the future began to split. The Queen acted quietly after the ceremony. According to a documented palace account prepared by a private aide, she asked for a letter to be drafted, sealed, and held until Sandringham once again became the center of a family crisis. The aide recorded that the monarch called Catherine the bridge, a phrase later repeated to Princess Anne in a private conversation. Anne carried that knowledge in silence, and the princess understood its danger. If Catherine was the bridge, then someone inside the family had already become the divide. That buried ceremony explained why Catherine was chosen, but it did not explain why the room suddenly turned against itself when the letter's meaning became impossible to ignore. The first reading broke Catherine's heart. The private confrontation that followed nearly broke the room. Once the aides withdrew and the doors closed, the royal family was left with the truth no statement could soften. The Queen had not written a farewell. She had drawn a line. And now Charles, William, Catherine, Camilla, and Anne had to decide who stood on which side of it. Charles asked for the smaller discussion, with a voice that tried to sound steady and failed. The king wanted William, Catherine, Camilla, and Anne alone with him, because aides could manage schedules, but they could not carry guilt. A private family council, meaning a closed discussion, where senior royals speak without staff shaping every word, mattered because it removed the shield of office. No one could hide behind titles now. William stayed beside Catherine, and the prince's silence was more dangerous than anger. She kept her eyes lowered, but everyone knew the Queen's message had shifted the room toward her. Camilla broke first. She did not raise her voice, yet every word landed hard as she questioned whether Catherine was now expected to become the emotional guardian of the monarchy. The Queen consort understood the threat clearly. If the family treated the late monarch's praise as instruction, Catherine's quiet power would become stronger than rank. Catherine lifted her head and answered with restraint, saying she had never asked for anyone's place. Her voice trembled, but it did not collapse. That mattered, because she refused to turn grief into ambition, and that refusal made the message even harder to dismiss. William rose when he heard the strain in Catherine's voice. The prince moved before caution could stop him, ready to defend her from the pressure gathering around the table. Catherine touched his wrist. One small gesture held him back, and for a second the room understood exactly why the Queen had trusted her. She could quiet anger without surrendering. She could absorb pain without making it a weapon. Charles saw it. Camilla saw it. Anne saw it most clearly of all, and the princess did not let the moment pass. Anne turned to Charles and spoke with brutal calm. She told the king that the Queen's words were deliberate, not symbolic, and that refusing to act on them would insult the legacy they claimed to defend. A royal legacy, meaning the duty, memory, and public trust passed from one reign to the next, was not something to admire only when it was easy. Charles finally admitted the second envelope contained guidance about future family representation at Sandringham, including who should speak for the crown in moments of mourning and unity. Catherine's breakdown had become a constitutional family crisis, and the next question was no longer emotional. What was power? Who had the authority to enforce the Queen's final wish? The confrontation ended with no shouting, only a chair pushed back against the floor, and that single sound carried the weight of the decision waiting in the next room. Power inside the monarchy rarely announces itself. It moves through sealed folders, careful wording, old signatures, and the silence of people who know more than they are allowed to say. After Catherine's tears, the family discovered that the Queen's final letter was not just emotional. It was connected to a decision structure that had been waiting quietly beneath the surface. Charles held the second envelope like it weighed more than paper. The king had faced speeches, crises, and public judgment, but this was different because it came from his mother's hand and reached beyond grief into control. The advisory instruction, meaning written guidance that does not replace royal authority, but strongly shapes how decisions should be made, named Sandringham family representation during moments of instability. That mattered, because representation was never only about who stood where. It told the nation who carried trust. It told the family who had been seen as steady when everyone else had begun to fracture. Catherine did not move as those words settled around her, and William felt the pressure tighten. Charles read the note alone for several minutes. No one interrupted him. The monarch's face hardened, then softened, then emptied, as if every sentence forced him to measure himself against the Queen one more time. He remained the reigning monarch, the person legally responsible for the crown, meaning the living institution of royal duty, authority, and national symbolism. Yet the letter placed him in a painful position, because legal power was not the same as moral power. His mother's voice still carried a force no seal could silence. When he set the note down without speaking, William understood that the king had not simply read advice, he had received judgment. William chose his words carefully, because one wrong phrase could turn pain into open warfare. The prince wanted to defend Catherine, but he also knew Charles was not only a king in that moment, he was a son, wounded by a mother's final caution. Catherine looked at William once, and the future king read the plea in her eyes. Do not make this about victory. Make it about survival. That quiet exchange mattered, because the family was not fighting over affection alone. They were fighting over who would steady the monarchy when private cracks threatened public trust. Anne broke the silence with controlled force. She confirmed she had known of the sealed instruction, though not the full wording, through a recorded private conversation with one of the Queen's longtime aides. The princess did not soften the truth. The Queen had wanted Catherine to become the steady presence at Sandringham when unity appeared threatened. Camilla heard the sentence and went still, realizing Anne's silence had not been neutrality. The Queen consort now understood that the power behind the decision was not a crown, not a title, not even Charles's command. It was the late monarch's moral order. By the time he folded the letter again, Sandringham had already changed, and one person in the room understood that the old balance would not return. Fallout does not always arrive with public announcements. Sometimes, it begins with a door left unopened, a name removed from a seating plan, a private secretary told to wait outside. After the Queen's final letter was read, Sandringham entered a new reality before the rest of Britain even knew anything had happened, and the first person to feel it was Camilla. Charles moved quickly, but not loudly. The king ordered a temporary review of Sandringham family protocols, and the phrase landed like a quiet punishment. Protocols, meaning the rules and customs that decide who attends private royal moments, and how family roles are handled, mattered, because they shaped who was trusted near power. They decided who heard sensitive words first, who stood close during crisis, and who represented continuity when the monarchy looked fragile. Charles understood that one adjustment could say more than any statement. William understood it too, because Catherine's name had now become impossible to separate from the Queen's final wish. Aides received new instructions before the room had fully recovered. The next family gathering plan would be revised, and Catherine would be placed closer to Charles and William in a position of symbolic trust. That mattered, because royal seating was never only about chairs. It was a message without words. The king knew the family would read it instantly, and Camilla would read it hardest. The Queen consort sat alone after the door closed, her expression firm but wounded, as if pride were the only shield left. She understood that Catherine had become emotionally untouchable in the eyes of the family, not because she had demanded it, but because the Queen had placed her there. Catherine did not celebrate the shift. She looked shaken by it. When William found her moments later, she told the prince that it felt as though the monarch had placed a burden on her shoulders that love alone might not be enough to carry. William listened without interrupting, and his silence held more fear than comfort. He had wanted Catherine protected, but now protection itself seemed impossible. The family's survival had been tied to her steadiness, and that truth mattered because it stirred personal grief into public duty before she had even agreed to bear it. Anne moved with colder certainty. The princess warned Charles that secrecy would deepen suspicion unless the family agreed on a Forel's clear internal response to the Queen's wishes. The king issued one more quiet instruction. The letter would be preserved in the Sandringham archive, a private royal collection where important family records are stored for future reference. But only limited royals would be allowed to see the complete wording. Camilla heard the decision and went still again. Catherine felt the walls of duty closing in. William realized the next step could not be handled by aides, lawyers, or protocol. It had to happen privately, between him and his wife, and when he finally found Catherine away from the others, the monarchy disappeared for a moment, leaving only two people facing the cost of destiny. Away from the table, away from the voices, away from the pressure of history, Catherine finally allowed herself to breathe. The letter had broken through every layer of composure she had built. But in the silence that followed, William did not speak to her as a prince. He spoke to her as the one person who had seen the weight arrive before the world did. Catherine stood apart from the others, with the kind of stillness that comes after too much pain. William found her before anyone else could turn her grief into meaning, and the prince closed the distance without ceremony. No aides stood between them. No secretary shaped the words. This mattered, because it was the first moment since the reading when Catherine was not being watched, measured, or quietly judged. The Queen's final words had become a call for her to steady the monarchy from within, and that duty, meaning the personal responsibility to serve the crown even when it costs peace, now felt less like honor and more like a storm pressing against her chest. William waited until Catherine looked at him. She told him she broke down, because the letter made her feel seen, in a way that was both comforting and terrifying. The Queen had noticed the sacrifices Catherine never named, the fear she buried for the children, the loneliness behind every polished smile. That mattered, because love from the monarch did not arrive gently. It arrived with expectation. Catherine said being trusted by the Queen felt like being handed a flame in a room full of wind, and William understood the danger immediately. The future king knew the family would praise her strength, while demanding more of it. William admitted what he had been afraid to say in front of Charles. He feared the crown would take more from Catherine than it had already demanded. The crown, meaning the monarchy itself, and the duty attached to it, had a way of turning devotion into endurance, and endurance into silence. Catherine answered softly that she was not afraid of duty. She was afraid of losing herself inside it. The prince looked at her then, not with royal confidence, but with a husband's fear, because he knew she had just spoken the truth that haunted every generation before them. Catherine revealed the line that struck her hardest. The Queen had written that the monarchy's future would survive only if compassion remained stronger than pride. William placed the folded copy of the letter between them, and promised they would not let others weaponize the monarch's words against her. Catherine listened, and something changed. Her grief did not disappear, but it began to harden into resolve. She had left the family in tears, yet when she returned, everyone could see she was no longer simply wounded. She was ready. But while Catherine found her strength in private, the world outside Sandringham was about to receive the first signal that something extraordinary had happened. The palace tried to move carefully, but silence has a sound of its own. By morning, Britain knew something had shifted. Not the full letter, not every word, but enough. A private Sandringham moment had become a national turning point, and Catherine's tears were no longer seen as collapse. They were seen as the moment the future monarchy revealed its human face. William approved the statement with a heaviness he could not hide. The prince understood that one carefully written sentence could calm the country or ignite it, and Catherine remained out of public view because every appearance now carried meaning. A palace statement, meaning an official message released to explain the royal family's position, confirmed that a private family letter from the Queen had been read at Sandringham, and that its message focused on unity, duty, and continuity. That mattered, because it proved the moment was real, without exposing every private word. It also mattered, because the wording made one thing impossible to miss. Catherine's role inside the family had been emotionally elevated. Charles read the final draft twice before approving it. The king paused over the phrase, "with gratitude for her late majesty's guidance," and the sentence seemed to wound him all over again. He knew the public would see respect in those words, but he felt the private weight behind them. The Queen's guidance, meaning her final moral direction for the family after her death, had not simply comforted Sandringham. It had forced the monarchy to admit that strength without tenderness could not hold. Charles signed off because he had no choice. William watched because he knew his father was surrendering more than wording. Catherine stayed hidden, but her absence spoke louder than any balcony appearance. The country filled in the silence with emotion. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathered beneath gray skies, holding flowers and handwritten cards addressed simply to Catherine. That single public moment captured what the palace could not control. People were not responding to rank. They were responding to pain. A woman had broken down after hearing the Queen's final words, and somehow, instead of weakening her, it made her feel closer to the nation. The front pages arrived like thunder. One newspaper framed the entire morning with the headline, "The Queen's Last Message, Catherine's Tears. A Nation's Turning Point," turning a private breakdown into a public symbol. Broadcasters repeated the phrase carefully, and the story moved from palace corridors into living rooms across Britain. Catherine did not reveal the letter. William did not explain the wound. Charles did not defend the silence. Yet the world understood enough. The Queen had marked Catherine as essential to the monarchy's future, and once the public saw her grief as strength, the meaning of Sandringham could no longer be contained inside palace walls. In the end, The moment at Sandringham was not remembered because Catherine broke down. It was remembered because she did not hide from what broke her. The Queen's final letter exposed pain, rivalry, guilt, and unfinished duty, but it also revealed something stronger than all of them. The monarchy's survival would depend not on perfect composure, but on honest humanity. Catherine accepted the meaning of that letter with a quiet strength no one in the room could have guessed. She did not treat it as victory over Camilla, Charles, or anyone else who had feared what the Queen's words might change. She treated it as a solemn promise. Sandringham, the royal family estate, where private grief often becomes public history, was no longer just the place where pain resurfaced. It became the place where the family finally understood the monarch's final vision for continuity, meaning the steady passing of duty, trust, and purpose from one generation to the next. That mattered because the monarchy had survived crowns, scandals, and silence, but it could not survive without someone willing to keep compassion alive at its center. William saw the truth before anyone said it aloud. The prince became more protective, but also more certain, because Catherine's strength had never come from never breaking. It came from rising after the break, with grace still intact. The crown, meaning the monarchy as both duty and national symbol, had demanded much from her already, yet she had not answered with bitterness. She had answered with service. William understood that this was why the Queen had trusted her. Catherine carried pain without turning it into cruelty, and in a family where pride had often spoken louder than love, that made her powerful in a way no title could fully explain. Charles reached his own painful conclusion. The king finally understood that his mother's final words were not a rejection of him, but a final act of guidance for a family still learning how to survive itself. He had heard judgment in the letter, because guilt made every sentence sharper, but beneath the wound was a mother's last attempt to protect the future. Camilla's silence became part of the verdict too. The queen consort did not lose her place, but she had to accept that Catherine now carried a moral authority no title could easily challenge. The balance had changed, and everyone knew it. Catherine's breakdown was not the collapse of a princess. It was the moment the monarchy found a human heart strong enough to carry the Queen's unfinished hope. Sandringham closed around that truth with finality. The letter had done what no decree could do. It turned tears into meaning, grief into purpose, and one woman's pain into the clearest symbol of the monarchy's future. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.